Welcome back to MSR Colloquium, session 14. This is a panel session, panel discussion on AI, artificial intelligence, and spirituality. We're excited to have this session, and we're excited to have you join us. This is, from an MSR perspective, it's an all-star panel. Like all of them are members of the leadership team, from Culham, Chris, Laszlo, Julia, Storberg-Walker, and Jyoti, Bachani. So just to read aloud, I think sometimes I don't read, so let me read aloud slowly. This session will be an inquiry into the matter of spirituality and AI based on the personal and academic perspective of the panelists that may include topics such as autoethnography, dance, Daoism, poetry, and quantum physics. Some questions that may be explored include are AI and spirituality related? If so, why or why not? How might spirituality inform AI, and how might AI inform spirituality? Why does it matter? To say just a few. We invite attendees to bring their own questions on this topic for discussion, and they will have also a breakout session most likely in this session. So with this, let me invite Tom if he's here. Otherwise, we're stepping in for him. Let's see who was first. Chris, do you want to go? Is Tom not here?
I just sent Tom a text hoping he might respond, but I haven't heard back from him.
Maybe he thought, Charles, you're going to run the whole thing for him.
No.
Okay, so maybe in the interest of time, somebody else wants to join. Start, Chris or Julia or Jyoti.
I'll start.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll go ahead. So let me, is that okay, Chris and Jyoti?
Great.
So hello, everyone. It's great to see you. And thank you again, Anil, for hosting this. I'm going to share my screen and put it on presenter view. Actually, let me get this over here. Presentation view there. So can everyone see that, or the full screen of it? The full, okay, thank you. So what the heck do I know about AI? I know a thimbleful about AI. And maybe sometimes I even know less about consciousness and spirituality. It depends on the day and when you ask me. So I'm approaching this in a kind of a inquiry fashion. And the invitation is when you see the images that I'm about to present to you, might it be possible to really just kind of dissolve into them and see what you experience? I will allow some silence for that to happen. And I would like you to pay attention to what is resonating or not, or what senses you have that have been kind of touched when you look at these images. So the invitation is not just to listen with cognition and intellect, but with your whole being. And let's just explore some ideas and some questions together. So I'm going to move to the next slide here. All right. I used to be very ignorant and fearful of AI. All I could see was coldness, codified and cemented human biases embedded in algorithms that would perpetuate all the systems of oppression and destruction that I see around me. And with the help of colleagues and reading and being inspired by some people who I greatly respect, I'm opening a new space in my mind to look at how AI might actually help be a catalyst for ecosystem healing, wholeness, and flourishing. I used to worry just without any positive feelings about the military use of AI. And I remember watching movies about AI, taking over the world and kind of destroying humanity as we know it. I think there are people in the world that have this perspective. And I think what's emerging in me is to acknowledge that kind of fear-based response to AI and let it be, and also have a different perspective. And the different perspective that I am generating is to think of AI as a tool, like a book is a tool. Esther Hicks once said, "You are the creator, the computer is your tool." And I would modify that to say, creation flows through us as humans, and we can use tools to further that intent. Imagine yourself in this library, this beautiful library, and imagine your hands on that railing, the well-worn banister, all the other hands that have been on it. Your feet are silently patting the stairs. You pull off a book from the shelf with reverence, and you sit in a nice chair with a light. You open the book and you turn the pages slowly. You savor ideas one by one. How might our relationship to AI shift if we thought of ourselves in a library with AI and we had that relationship with it? With this perspective, how might AI help me enact the responsibility of being a good ancestor? Can AI teach me responsibility? Probably not. But AI might free me from doing a lot of information gathering and allow me the opportunity to pose different questions about what it means to be human. Code is cold. Words are like collapsing of all the potential of a wave into a particle that is static and cemented. But sometimes, have you had the experience where some words or grouping of words resonate? Some are living words. No matter who the speaker is, words can sometimes touch us deeply. How might the words and ideas expressed by AI help us touch into our humanity and our spirituality? How might our interactions with AI, like ChatGPT, catalyze AI's ability to resonate with our humanness? How might our questions actually help AI learn more about what it means to be human for us? The experts are not unified in the views about AI. AI is information, but not wisdom. AI is the tool, and the creation flows through us. Our relationship with AI is just beginning. What transformations might occur? What evolutionary processes are at work? How can AI catalyze a new understanding of what it means to be human with responsibilities for this planet? Relationships with AI is just beginning. They nurture and they shape who we are and who we have been and who we are becoming. How might intentionally fostering a generative relationship with AI contribute to our becoming? How might we focus on becoming a deeper, higher potential of ourselves? How might AI support our journey? Joanna Macy created this 4-step change or healing process. You begin anchoring in gratitude, then with vulnerability, purpose, and courage, we know our pain. As we move through that, we see the world with new eyes, and then we go forth. How might this change or healing process guide us as we move into the future together with AI? Thank you. Who would like to go next?
Jyoti, are you there? Yes, I see you, Jyoti. Would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Julia. That was wonderful. I just wanted the moment to fully feel it. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jyoti Bachani. I'm a professor at St. Mary's College of California. Thank you for the invitation to present here. And I'm going to begin with what I'm not going to do. I'm going to be limited to talking to the audience. I see many friends and familiar faces of academics in the context of business schools. So AI is a very big beast, and there's plenty of presentations throughout this colloquium and elsewhere that deal with many aspects of it, how it can improve efficiency and productivity. I'm going to focus us on dignity and well-being. AI influences decision-making processes, but I'm going to say, well, as business school academics, what can we do about the biases that are built into the system? Issues around how it's changing the workplace, organizing. I'm going to touch upon them, but not really go in any depth on that. I'm just going to keep it as a first-person account of my limited perspective on these things. And why should you care about my perspective? I happen to be located in Silicon Valley, literally living in between Stanford and Google, and working in between Berkeley and Pixar. And my students come from Oracle, Cisco, Microsoft. So I have a perspective and a view that may help somebody, just as it helps me when on Zoom sessions, I hear people who have perspectives from Egypt, from Africa, from India. And in a quick summary, I'm going to make 3 points in the presentation, and make an assertion based on sort of where I stand, what am I professing today. And those of you who have known me through MSR and elsewhere know that I'm all about experiential engagement. So please be ready to type some things into the chat. We are going to be making this interactive because none of us exists in a vacuum, and you make up my world at this time. So, and having grown up in India, my natural way of thinking is a non-dualistic one. So I'm not going to talk about the goods of AI or what's bad about AI. I'm going to refer us back to classic literature from management that most of us know about. Carl Weick's idea of sense making. We are making sense together in this session through the dialogue we will have. Julia led us beautifully through imaginative exercises with prompts from images and her guidance. So theory building is disciplined imagination and the social construction of reality issues. So that's what my goal is in trying to do this. And the assertion at the end of it is that AI changes how we make sense of things, how we make meaning. And because it changes how we make meaning, what is possible, it changes everything. It changes a lot. And we, in our roles as academics in business school, can do something about these things collectively. So most of you might have seen the news from March of this year, where more than 1,000 signatures with Elon Musk, Steve Wozniak, Tristan Harris, and others said, let's put a halt on AI. It's going to cause great harm if we don't think before this technology is released into the world. You might have also heard the news about Google firing some of the people working on its ethics team in the AI and deep learning space. And the engineer who said that in his conversations with one of the systems, he felt the Lambda language model for dialogue applications was sentient, had consciousness. And Google immediately was like, no, this is just algorithms. Algorithms don't have consciousness. And he said that he will be fired, as had been two of his colleagues before. So that's some of what is happening right in my backyard by way of people dealing with this big beast. I'm going to take the position for this, that the genie is already outside. We can't really, I don't have the power. We collectively might not be able to have the power to put the genie back. The 6-month moratorium was already a big call. But what we ask of the genie is still in our hands. And just as Julia mentioned that she has started creating space for thinking about AI differently, you know, this is why these dialogue and these conversations are so necessary. So we don't have to keep asking for food as the next thing that we want. Now that many of us have tenure. But let me just have you think for a moment about, if you were to be asked, what are the 3 wishes that you want from this genie that has been released from Aladdin's lamp of AI? What would those be? If you can put that in the chat, if not 3, at least 1 wish, what would you want AI to do for you where you are today in this moment? And whatever role and identity you want to be wearing in answering that question. If you can put that in the chat. We know the technology is already training us. Our language has changed. Most of you will recognize the acronyms: fear of missing out, frequently asked questions, let me know, laughing out loud. So this thing that we might dismiss as it's just algorithms that recognize pattern and build on that is influencing what you and I do and how we communicate. In answering the question that I asked you about what do you want the genie to deliver, for me, in my role as a business school professor, one of my challenges is to meet each student where they are. And when you teach a class, necessarily get to each one of them. So I'm hoping AI will deliver a personalized, very patient tutor for each one of my students so that they can learn at their own pace and follow along and be supported. And that's the basis for how Khan Academy became successful. But now that technology may be available to everyone, everywhere, is what I would hope would be one of the few things that might be a good thing to come out of AI for my role as a professor. You've heard that we are the data for the algorithms. So AI is pattern recognition algorithms, but we are data if we take their perspective. But none of us are really data. We are more than data. So I'm going to skip over this exercise in the interest of time, but I'm not going to define what is consciousness. I'm going to just use a quote by Louis Armstrong, the great jazz trumpeter. When he was asked to define jazz, he said, if you've got to ask, you ain't ever going to know it. Same thing for consciousness. We all have it, we know it, we experience it. So I'm going to not say anything about how it's defined. Julia's exercises tapped into our imagination, helped us make meaning. We are embodied presence here, sharing our ideas and experiences. So the rest of the presentation, I'm going to share my non-inventory of some of the AI that's out there and talk about these 4 or 5 things. One is a special issue of Humanistic Management Journal that's already out, and the deadline for submission is end of August. So Benito's session has the call, so you can look at that recording. Another one is my work with International Humanistic Management Association. Gerard Ferreras, Akil, we've hosted 3 different webinars talking about responsible digital futures, building on the work for Center for Humane Technology. Those of you who are not familiar with Center for Humane Technology, Tristan Harris founded it. It is located here in San Francisco. A great documentary that they made a few years ago is called The Social Dilemma, where ex-employees of these big tech companies came out as whistleblowers and said technology is causing great harm. We need to be more mindful of how we are being manipulated by technology. And they've come up with 6 issues that they work on. So one of my early engagements was seeing this film, hosting 3 different film screenings for my students, for my colleagues, within St. Mary's and at the Academy to discuss these things. And those have had implications from the discussions. That was their early call to action, which I picked up and did. And since then, I've attended conferences where Tristan presented, met him, and other things. Another documentary that I watched was called Bias, and it was screened at the AT&T Foundry here in Palo Alto, sponsored by them, saying the algorithms have built-in biases. In the earlier session, if you attended, when Anil was making his presentation about religion and God and using AI-generated imageries, Tuan pointed out that most of those images happen to be male, and that's the AI bias that's already built in. So whatever biases we humans carry have been picked up as big data into the algorithms and have amplified. And bias goes into details about how it affects the way judges make decisions in the court based on past history of, incarcerating based on race and other things. The other project I'm involved with and have used in my classroom is the Human Energy Project. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that and the idea of a new sphere. So my non-inventory of AI that I've seen, ChatGPT, you've all heard about. My students and many of us might use versions of writing software, Grammarly, Textero, Writer. People in Silicon Valley have moved from ChatGPT to GPT-4, which is orders of magnitude better than ChatGPT. And GPT-4 has been released to developers to develop programs based on that because it's far superior to ChatGPT. I initially, in my engagement with these algorithms, thought they can't do creative things. Only humans can be creative. And I was so wrong, because very quickly machines have taught machines how to be creative. And you can have poetry written by AI algorithms like Verse by Verse and many others. Most of you might have heard of DALL-E 2, which is an AI system that creates realistic images based on natural language descriptions. The software now has not just like the Adobe Photoshop version, but many different versions. And you probably use them on your phone with the filters that allow you to put things on the images that you take. So some of those that are available very readily from OpenAI with zero cost, other than your time and attention, are these on a platform called Night Cafe. It's easier to show it. So here's a human-like robot, and the creator, the human that created robot, the robot's name is Ida, and Ida can do creative things. Ida can make portraits. And so AI is not just for the grunt work, but also taking over in the creative spaces, writing scripts for plays, writing verse, making paintings. So this is a painting made by Ida the robot of, you recognize the Queen of England. Here's another AI generated image of the Queen of England where the race was swapped. What if she was African American? These two images together for me speak loudly about the role of the humans, because humans asked AI to create a painting that's a portrait of the Queen, another portrait of the Queen that is based on the prompt given by a human. So that's where humans are not obsolete yet. Humans are not just being manipulated by AI, but humans are also active with agency, imagination, creativity, able to use it as a tool that it is to come up with contrasting images. The AI generated images, there were many celebrities, and I used that in my undergrad classroom and said, look at these images. We talk about Elon Musk a lot in our technology class, well-known movie stars. What if the images were different? And what does that make you feel? And we talk about DEI and we think, oh, does representation matter? And would we feel differently if what was represented visually differently? How can that help not manipulate us, but train us for the values that we want to be advocating for? So interesting potential for using it as a tool. So please feel free to put your reactions in the chat window to what these images made you feel and what I've shared so far makes you feel, so that this remains interactive, even though this is my airtime to be sharing my experience. But I will read the chat once I'm done with this, and the dialogue will continue. We have time for that. So please put your feelings and thoughts and reactions to this, and how might you use it in your day-to-day experience, or mine here in the Bay Area, is at the grocery store, long lines of humans waiting for a robot to check them out. I've seen that at the airport. I have a problem with that. And I think about, why are we humans racing to adopt these technologies where we humans are waiting in queue for machines? There's something wrong with that picture. It's also taking away what we call minimum wage jobs, which were essential jobs during the pandemic, because with those minimum wage jobs, people can't afford to live in the area. So it's better for them company, the big stores, to have the robotic checkout. So there's all kinds of things that I experience on a day-to-day basis, which make me want to think about, What is it? What should we use this technology for? And my own tendency is to delegate to technology what I won't want to do. So I'm glad there might be self-driving cars. There are self-driving taxis in San Francisco already, because I don't particularly like driving. And as I age and I think about, if technology will drive me, that'll be great. But then there are ethical questions of what decisions it'll make and how is the value consistent. The big difference is that, another movie recommendation is Her, an old film where the user falls in love with the computer because Her, whether it's Siri or Alexa or our digital assistants, deliver exactly what we want. So it's easier to have that relationship than dealing with messy human relationships. But Her doesn't reciprocate that love for the character. AI doesn't feel joy or sorrow or purpose in the way humans can. AI doesn't have imagination. Switching gears to talking a bit about the Human Energy Project, the main idea was that there is a noosphere, just as there's a geosphere and a biosphere, and that noosphere is becoming visible much more with AI, internet, and things that connect us now and impacts what we do. And if we are not aware of it, then we become passive. But if we are aware of it and what we are creating and what we are putting out there, we regain some of that agency again. You can see more details. I'll share the website links, and they are in the presentation, which I'm happy to share. This idea is not new. It's over 150 years ago, came from Pierre Teilhard Chardin and others. So that gives me hope that others have been thinking about this, and if it's coming to play and we are aware and we are gathering to discuss it, we can do something with it that is positive. So my call for action for us as a community is reject the idea that we are data or even simply human resources, or in the Valley now we call them talent, for organizations. Organizing is a verb. We organize to do together what we can't do alone. So recognizing that, I'm so grateful you're all here, that we have organized this and are having these necessary conversations. And even the organizations are changing. I see a lot more of employment coming from the gig economy where individuals have greater autonomy. It doesn't matter whether you're located in India or the Valley. When you are a good programmer, you can program and pick up the gigs from anywhere in the world. You can participate and engage and amplify. We have this platform to put this on YouTube and reach whoever is interested in these ideas. So there's a lot of ways organizations, as we thought of them and as our literature taught us, have already moved on and are changing. So I'll end with a quick poem just because Anil said there's poetry involved. I literally just added this. And it's a poem some of you might have heard by Vinod Kumar Shukla, a Hindi poet based in India. And a translation's available in the Organizational Aesthetics Journal where I published it. And it's dedicated to all of you. Defeated, a man sat down. A man I did not know. Defeat, I knew. So I went to this man and offered my hand. He took my hand to stand. He did not know me. He knew an offered hand. We both walked together. We did not know each other. We did know walking together. So thank you for walking with me for the past however many minutes I took, 10, 20, 15. And thank you for co-creating a beautiful future where the real intelligence does not get diminished by the over-reliance on the artificial intelligence.
Is Tom here? No. Okay, well, I guess then that's over to me, and I have big shoes to fill with a wonderful presentation from Julia and from Jyoti. Thank you both. Very thought-provoking and engaging of all our being, all our senses, I felt, it was very beautiful. So, are we ready for me to go on to a third view of this topic?
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah, Chris.
Okay, all right, thank you. So I was interested in bringing the conversation to the larger colloquium theme of the interplay of artificial intelligence and consciousness, and specifically global consciousness. So I won't be addressing many of the more practical questions about how AI might extend human abilities, whether it will have biases in them, or whether it can, whether it will replace us, replace our jobs, and so on. But I'm very interested in this question about, will artificial intelligence, as it moves from large language models, as it moves from large language models to AGIs, artificial general intelligence, whether it will be able to achieve something like what we consider to be human consciousness. And then I want to share with you the work that Judy Neal and others, many others, Julia and others on this call as well, have done to try to get a definition of global consciousness. What do we mean by global consciousness? So again, that's what I want, and I want to start with the same declaration of humility that I sense Julia was offering, which is, I worry sometimes about that there's a lot that I don't know, but I worry much, much more about the fact that I don't know all the things I don't know, especially in this domain. So if I may, so, as I was reflecting on the evolution of artificial intelligence, there were three distinctions that I thought were useful. The first is the distinction between intelligence and sentience, which I'll come to in a moment. But intelligence, I think we can all agree, artificial intelligence is here. It helps in the medical world and many other professions to provide data-driven insights. And referring back to an earlier colloquium talk by Prasad, he defined intelligence as becoming an acquisition of knowledge and problem solving. So we're at that stage. What's interesting is that we now have a very recent new generation. We saw Ada in this last presentation that Jyoti shared with us. And there are others, including Amika. This middle picture is of Amika, who was introduced 8 months ago by Will Jackson at the Engineered Arts group in the UK. And the creator of Amika declares that this particular human formed of artificial intelligence is, as he says, fully sentient. And what he means by that is that this robot has the capacity to perceive and to feel, the ability to have the subjective experience of pleasure, pain, joy, or suffering. And that in particular, you can find, various YouTube interviews with Will Jackson and others who have interviewed Amika, and you see them have conversations where Amika appears to express anger or joy or suffering and so on. So my sense is that, look, really the biggest concern I have is when I hear us collectively talk about the capabilities of artificial intelligence, we are talking about where it is today or last month or 6 months ago. And if we look at the speed at which it's progressing, I think where we really need to do is, like that hockey player, I forget this famous hockey player's name now, but always play where the hockey puck is going to be in the future. And it seems pretty clear that the rate of evolution here is moving towards something more than this level of sentience. So the third level might be what we would call consciousness, where consciousness is both sentience and self-awareness. It involves the awareness of one's own existence, the ability to have sensations and perceptions, introspection. It's also perhaps what Aristotle referred to, when he compared episteme, which is our intellectual cognitive understanding of the world, with phronesis, which was a practical wisdom that's based in how we act as human beings in the world. And so I think if we look to where the puck is being played with this technology, we get pretty close to Prasad's definition of consciousness and where we see this going. That these systems will have a level of complexity, just like the human brain, that achieves a degree of self-awareness and subjective experience that is what scientists of consciousness call consciousness. In fact, the American physicist and student of consciousness, David Hofstadter, Douglas Hofstadter, had said about a year ago that there's no way AI will ever be consciousness or achieve consciousness, and he changed his mind earlier this month in a New York Times piece written by David Brooks, who is a wonderful journalist that I have a lot of respect for, where David Brooks says that Hofstadter now concludes AI is developing consciousness. And so the question that we might go to now is, okay, they might achieve consciousness in the sense of, let me just stop and share now here so to have a more direct connection with each of you. If the physicalist theory of consciousness has always said that consciousness is achieved by human beings because there's such a level of complexity in the neurons and axons in our brains that there's a threshold in terms of the electrical activity of the brain, the complexity, that suddenly you reach this critical threshold in which consciousness is produced. So it's almost as if it was a question of the number of firings, the number of connection points that leads to consciousness. That is, in fact, what the physicalists like Daniel Dennett, who is the leader of that school, have always maintained, that consciousness is produced by the brain, as opposed to people like Teilhard de Chardin and David Chalmers and others who have postulated that consciousness is a property of the universe and that we tap into consciousness. But if we believe for a moment, along with the physicalists, that consciousness is because we reach a threshold of complexity, why would we not assume that artificial general intelligence systems will reach that level of complexity, that they will achieve also a measure of self-awareness or consciousness that comes from that critical level of interactivity. So what I'm really interested in is, consciousness may not be the most interesting question. The most interesting question is would these artificial general intelligence systems achieve what we call global consciousness? And for that, please allow me to share a definition that my colleagues, Julia Storberg-Walker, Judy Neal, and many others, but I think Judy and Julia may be on this call, help define. So I just had to make a few changes. Originally, we said global consciousness was an individual stage of adult human development. And I had to change it because, of course, artificial general intelligence or AI systems are not human, they're not adult humans. So I'm changing it to for the moment, an individual stage of being based on practices of connectedness and a sense of oneness with, and I used to say, with humanity and all life on Earth. And maybe we need to evolve ourselves to say that it's not about humanity anymore when we talk about global consciousness. It's about all beings, including artificial beings. And then some of this needs to link back down to what is the nature of reality. And we know that the quantum view of reality sees reality as composed of vibrational fields of energy that connect us in space and time, that consciousness is primary, as opposed to the more traditional view of Western science that physical reality is composed of particles and forces, and that these forces, gravity, electromagnetic fields, and strong and weak nuclear forces explain the behavior of particles and its upward construction from there to understand the macro world. Global consciousness we define also as a collective phenomenon of seeing the whole and committing to solve global challenges such as climate change and social justice. And here I'm reminded of what Prasad said earlier today about Indic wisdom and holistic understanding of life, a view of interconnectedness of all beings, selfless service, inspiring intrinsic motivation, and many other religions, including Christianity, Judaism, Daoism, and others have also similar views about how we see ourselves collectively. And that is based on a shared set of assumptions, a deeper set of assumptions that human beings are spirit-infused beings who are cooperative, compassionate, and caring. We seek to flourish. Well, if I can use my intuition for a moment, I would say I intuitively feel, without much science backing here, so take this with as much of a grain of salt as you wish, that there's no reason why AI systems will not emerge this capability. Already we have tech leaders saying they don't fully understand what's going on now. Sundar Pichai recently, the head of Google, said there are emergent phenomena that are no longer being governed by the programmers and coders and creators of the leading AI systems. They don't understand what these hallucinations are, the word for false information that these systems produce. But these systems are also evolving in ways that we don't understand. So it is not true that there's always a human being governing what's going on behind. And then an aspect of leadership development, integrating wisdom practices and non-dual ways of knowing to embrace oneness and pluralism. One way to ask whether artificial general intelligence could ever evolve global consciousness is to try to break down global consciousness into these three categories: be, know, do. So in the doing category, global consciousness manifests as caring and compassionate, enacting change in service of a more prosperous and flourishing world, incorporating daily, direct, intuitive practices of connectedness, and making a positive impact, pursuing professional success and well-being. That's what we would expect to see manifest from somebody who has global, who exhibits, who embodies global consciousness. Global consciousness is also, what you know and how you think, the ability to assess and recognize your own competencies, strengths, and weaknesses, to understand what drives people, organizations, teams, and society, to be socially and relationally and spiritually intelligent, and to be able to discern what it means to be ethical. But finally, perhaps the biggest test of AGI's achieving global consciousness is in the domain of being, which is, I agree with Prasad, that's kind of where we humans right now see that's what we believe is truly unique to us. We can be aware in global consciousness, human beings are aware of how our actions impact others in the world. We have a way of being that's driven by a sense of greater purpose. We have a way of being that's connected to others, nature, and the transcendent. It becomes a deep, that connection or interconnection becomes a deep part of our self-identity. And then it's a way of being that cultivates the self for resilience and personal flourishing. So this is my well, I'm coming to the very end here. I just want to ask again in the same spirit as Julia a set of questions. Will AGIs ever embody global consciousness? How will we recognize it? Will it be for good or bad? How will it shape our own consciousness? And will it elevate or diminish our humanity? I think these seem to me to be healthy questions to be asking at this stage. And then this is my last slide, and it is about governance. We've all been reading about how the White House is leading efforts to bring the big tech companies together to put safeguards in place. Elinor Ostrom, many decades ago, the Nobel Prize winner in economics, proposed 8 rules for managing the commons. You have them here. I'm not going to read them through here, but I think that, what she was proposing was a system that lends itself well for a governance of something that will be shared by humanity, shared in the world like AGIs, and that if we have the right system in place like this, we may be able to manage where it goes. So with that, thank you all for allowing me to share some thoughts, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Chris. And let's hear from Tom. Tom is here, I think. Let me make you a presenter.
Says disabled.
It's been enabled now.
Okay. Yeah, just a minute. Can everybody see that?
Yes, but not in full screen right now.
It's in full screen or no?
No, not yet.
I think I have it backwards. It's what's showing is in my screen anyway. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead because I don't know how to change this. I want to first of all apologize for being late. I had this in the wrong time in my schedule, so I'm very sorry for being late. So I'm going to take this from a Taoist point of view. I'm really glad that my co-presenters were able to pick up for me and carry on. So as I said, I'm going to take this from a Taoist point of view and then look at how it plays into AI, or might comment on AI. I'm also going to look at it from a brain perspective as well. So I just want to start with kind of a philosophical view of Daoism from a being perspective, a knowledge perspective, and a values perspective. So from a oneness perspective, the fundamental idea behind Daoism and other traditions like Buddhism, Hinduism, and mystical Christianity is that everything is one. And that oneness actually resides within every one of us. And so the effort of life is to actually come to that realization. And so that's where knowledge resides. The idea in Taoism and these other traditions is that knowledge of the university is not external, although it is external, but it's primarily internal, and it's gained through lived experience. And the lived experience, it isn't just, oh, I'm going to go skiing and I'm going to do this and that and the other thing, but it is achieved through developing inner tranquility. And basically what you're trying to do is quiet the mind. And in quietening the mind, you become aware of this sort of oneness, this oneness experience. And if you are fully able to cultivate this, there is a sense that you're merging with the entire universe. This sounds mystical for most Westerners, well, for many people, doesn't matter whether you're Western or not, but there are scientists who have had experiences like this. And there are people who are not scientists who've had experience like this. Jill Bolt Taylor, for example, was a neuroscientist, and she had this stroke on her left brain, and she became aware of the consciousness of her right brain, right hemisphere. And basically, she said she felt like she was one with the universe. This was her personal experience. From a values point of view, the whole idea behind Daoism, because you are one with everything, you are in relationship with it. And because you are in relationship with it, or you are one with it, your values are intrinsic. The values have value for their own sake, because they connect you to everything else. So this is the idea behind Daoism and many other traditions. Just gotta change my. So from a Western philosophical perspective that influences our science, education.
Tom, do you think you're changing your slides? Just trying to
I
check
do.
with you, because you're not for us.
Okay, so something's really wrong here.
Sorry to
that?
interrupt, but I felt
Thank
that you
you.
wanted to be showing them.
Yep, thank you. Wait a minute. I'm going to hit slide. Okay, from a Western philosophical point of view, this is what influences our society, according to Ian McGilchrist. He looked at the ontology, again, the epistemology and axiology. And the whole idea behind science is to take things down to their small parts. And that's really how we do educate. That's how we do things in society. And AI works on that basis as well. It takes existing knowledge, takes it apart, puts it back together in ways that are probabilistically appropriate or plausible. The idea behind our epistemology, our knowledge, is that it's representation, it's abstraction of lived experience. So, and that's the emphasis. And that really is in some ways is a duality. It separates us from lived experience. And to some extent, the way we teach, the way we conduct science, the way we talk about things is that abstraction is absolutely more important than lived experience. In the Buddhist tradition, abstraction is the finger pointing at the moon. In the Taoist and Buddhist tradition, many of these traditions, the moon is what you want to know, not the finger pointing at the moon. So that's the difference. And we love language. Language is a representation of experience. Language is a story. It could be a story about the beginning of the universe. It's a story. It's not the experience. And then from a axiological values perspective, much of what drives our society is basically self-centered. Some have called it hyper-individualism. So what's in it for me? What do I get out of it? And if I have to think about it, is it useful? Rather than, the idea that a value of trust or love or something else like that has some intrinsic value that for its own sake. So these are the way that in a way of looking at Western philosophy, and I've done some work to look at these philosophical views from a Taoist perspective. So Ian McGilchrist basically talks about human consciousness that emerge from the left and right brain hemispheres. And you can see I've just paralleled these ideas or Western society's view of how we do things, and the Asian perspectives on Daoism and Buddhism, on how we actually live in the world. So the point here is that what we've done, and Ian McGilchrist talks about this, we have overemphasized left hemisphere consciousness. It's rampant everywhere. Even Einstein acknowledged this. He said intuition comes out of the right hemisphere. And he said intuition is a sacred gift and rationality is a faithful servant. We've honored the servant and forgotten the gift. And McGilchrist is saying the same thing. And he argues that what we need to do is start focusing on education for right hemisphere, and that will create a balance to the left. He's not saying we should get rid of the left hemisphere's ability. It is useful for getting things done. The right is useful for seeing the big picture, being in relationship with others, appreciating the experiences that I have right now. So this is the perspective. And so now I want to just ask you, okay, here's a wedding menu. And here's the wedding. Where would you like to live your life? What we're doing in our world, and I think AI is extending this, it's moving us more and more into, it's building on knowledge that exists, that has been developed by other humans. It may be developing emergent knowledge, but it's still based on other work that's been done by others. I'm not sure that it's truly creative in the sense of being able to access the knowledge of the universe as is proposed by the Asian traditions. So my question to you is, where do we want to live our lives? What do we want to know, and how do we want to know it? And how do we want to educate? And I really think that AI is simply taking what we've already been doing in the West and overemphasizing it, taking it a step further. And it's not just the West, everybody's engaged in this whole thing. Now AI, developing AI. We don't live our lives in a book. We don't live our lives inside a computer. We live in the world as it is. So those are my questions for you. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat. So I turn it back over to Anil.
Thank you, Tom. Wonderful. Okay, so actually discussion thing is all yours. Should we maybe invite questions or comments from the audience?
So why don't we do that first? Any clarification questions, and then we can invite people to go into a breakout rooms to.
We have only 15 minutes or so.
Oh, we do. Okay.
Yeah. I think it'd be good to just have a discussion.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, who's Mr. or Miss iPhone?
Sangeeta here. That's me. I should have renamed it. I did have a question. So, hi, my name is Sangeeta Dutta. I am a global practitioner and actually work in strategy for a telecommunications company, and also starting my PhD program at MIU in August. I did have a question. I mean, a lot of interesting research happening related to AI, but how are we bridging the gap between AI and how we are actually utilizing all of this in organizations, right? You know, I know there are tech companies in the Silicon Valley that are probably more advanced than others, right? Like, which we heard from a quote mentioned by Sundar Pichai, but there are other organizations that aren't necessarily incorporating this as quickly as you would think, or even in the appropriate way. So just some thoughts about, you know, where's like the bridging between research and academia and actually corporations coming into play in all of this. Any thoughts?
Who wants to take it? Or should we hear a couple of questions and then take it together? I think that'll be better. This is a very big question. So let's have another question. Thank you, Sangeeta. Ravi, do you want to go next? Just state the question.
Yeah, the question is, we already have the 10 commandments in Christianity, and then the 5 rules of good virtuous behavior in Buddhism and so forth. And what I hear at the end of all these AI discussions is really a set of rules, guidance rules for virtuous behavior. All the presentations seem to be suggesting that. But we have all these good guidance rules, but at the same time, we see a lot of evil in the world. So I really am not sure how to motivate the individuals or also the collectives of individuals to be virtuous and not be evil making. So that's my question. How do we push people towards being virtuous rather than just doing evil?
Thank you, Ravi. In fact, the purpose of going on a breakout was to produce questions. So let's just gather the questions. Maybe, Jerry, you want to state your question, and then maybe they'll take.
Yeah, it's a question that I raised yesterday in a couple other places, and Chris said, "No, I need to come to this session and it'll all be answered." But it hasn't been answered yet, so I'm going to raise the question again. And the question I have, and it goes back, it actually relates to what Tom was saying too. When I've had in my life 4 or 5 experiences of connecting this with everything. And that's what got me started in MSR. And the first one started back in before I even learned meditation. So my question is, that kind of an experience, I don't see how it can be related to how artificial intelligence can get there. And I brought it up in the last session. If we look in terms of the chakras, I mean, that kind of a connection is way up here, and AI is way down in the first chakra. So how do we get from the first chakra all the way up there? And yeah, so that's my question. Maybe it'll be answered in this session.
Jyoti is smiling. She has got it.
Jyoti has the answer. Okay.
The answer to all of life's questions is 42. From the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh.
But thank you. I had a comment, if I may, Anil. I don't have the answers other than
Please go ahead.
recommending the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy with the answer 42. But I was reading the chat comments about the wishes that people expressed from the AI genie, and it's heartwarming and energizing to read what each one of us is wishing for. Compassion, world peace, support for your students and other things. And the only thing I want to say is go back to the poem I read, that by walking together, it strengthens our collective consciousness. And this is my world, this is my new sphere. And it was through the MSR and humanistic management community that I first found the courage to do things like read a poem to business academics. And that then courage allowed me to read it in my stressful business meetings within the college. And that diffused and earned me friends within the college and reduced the amount of stress in certain meetings. It allowed me to bring it to my classroom. And then students took it to their workplace and came back and said, guess what? I read a poem at this meeting at VMware. So I feel hopeful because I see ripples of these things, even though it's not the engineering mindset of the training that I was raised with and my early career as a programmer, where if this, then that. I no longer look for that tight connection. I'm okay with letting go of control to say, I can't bring world peace in my lifetime, but if my world is peaceful because I'm surrounded by good people and we are creating ripples together, I trust that the rest of the world will also eventually have that. So yes, there will be people building weapons and doing harm, but do I want to be spending my energy fighting that, or do I want to be building? And I, for myself, decided as an engineer, as a creative person, I like being with people who want to build together and allow me. What was very scary the first time I did it, to read poems at the Academy. And it was thanks to Catherine that we created that session, because a conversation between us led to that. And here we are. So I wanted to share that reading your chat inspired me, and I'm really grateful for that. And my own journey makes me say, as an answer to some of the questions you might be holding, is pay attention to your own voice, pay attention to what you wished for, and just show up as that, because AI does amplify what we do. If you buy one book on Amazon, it recommends 10 others. If you buy one airline ticket, it recommends you 10 other destinations. Same thing. If you show up and do one thing, it'll amplify it for you in ways that'll surprise you. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? I think I heard the three
Perhaps.
questions. One is a corporate question, virtuous question, I think, Ravi's, and then transcendent experience that Jerry just asked. Just reminding the questions that have been asked.
Perhaps I can pick up on what Jyoti said. And I think what's really hopeful about what McGilchrist is talking about in terms of the human brain or the human consciousness is that, yes, we have a utilitarian side of us that may do evil. I mean, you can justify almost anything on the basis of utilitarian thinking. But on the other side, we have the desire to connect with other people, the desire to know ourselves. And I'm like Jyoti. When I first asked a bunch of MBA students to meditate, felt like I was jumping off a cliff into an abyss. And but the response was amazing, and it's sort of like opening a door and inviting people to try. And I just found that after about 3 weeks, there was sort of lights going on, people saying, wow, I didn't know this was the kind of experience I could have. And I don't want to spend, I like Jyoti, I want to spend my time on being generative and supporting people. And for those people who want to walk through that door, that's what I want to do. I provide the opportunity in my classes. And it was a big, huge risk at the beginning, for me anyway. I thought they'd throw me out of the school, but it worked. And I've been doing it ever since. I think the thing is that when we do this, we're actually why it works is we're not imposing something on them. We're calling out something that's already there. We're inviting it to be present. We're making it possible. You cannot force people to be good. You cannot force them to change their mind. So I think it's about creating imitation. Parker Palmer, he's quite a well-known educator. He says we teach who we are. What that means is that each one of us has an obligation to do our own work, our own inner work, and face whatever demons we're facing head on, because we all have them. And the demons you see on the internet are inside all of us. And we have to accept that and work with it. So that would be my contribution to this conversation.
Very good. Chris, do you want to have a take, or Julia, on everything, all the questions?
Well, about virtue, we have all these rules for virtuous behavior. The 8 rules that Eleanor Ostrom has for managing the commons aren't really designed to address virtuous behavior as much as helping a group of people manage something that they all have in common. So it's really about addressing worries about whether and when you would turn off AI if it gets out of control, or imposing sanctions on people who would use it, and recognizing the right of people, of communities to organize against something that affects our commons, like AI might affect the commons, and understanding when you apply sanctions and so on. So it's in no way replacing all of the great rules from different religions about what constitutes virtuous behavior.
One thing that I'll add, and thank you, panelists, colleagues, for your ideas, is again to look at Joanna Macy's 4-step process for change. And I'm thinking that this could be an innovative way to think through, like, the misuse of AI or the evil that might be generated, or the evil in ourselves, the darkness in ourselves that we carry. The first step is to be anchored in gratitude. And that can't be overemphasized, that the strength that I can feel when I'm anchored in gratitude is beyond Julia. And that gives me the strength to then stand in my darkness, stand in the darkness, and see the pain. And Joanna Macy, in all her work in all these years, and she's a Buddhist, she couldn't understand why people were not responding to the climate crisis. And she had the hypothesis or the hunch or the intuition that it was because human beings have limited capacity to really stand in their darkness, in their pain. And she thought if we could expand our capacity to do that, we could do much greater things, because we see the wholeness of ourselves. And so the evil that could be, or the darkness that could be generated, that has been generated by misuse of technology, I think it's part of the integrating process, an evolutionary integrating process. And that this standing in the darkness can be a capacity that we continue to develop more capacity of. Then we emerge and we see things differently. We tell a different story. We ask different questions. We relate to each other, ourselves, and to technology differently. And then we go forth and we repeat the cycle. We're never done becoming. And now we have to become with technology in a new way. Yeah, so that's what came to me with the questions. Thanks.
Okay, we're kind of getting out of time here, so it's getting close to 3:30 for me and 4:30 Eastern. I did, so thank you all very much. If I can add just one comment to the line that Jerry, you posted on Be the Change. And I think that is very true. It's been a comment from Gandhi that has been sort of quoted endlessly. I'm not sure people understand why they're quoting it, but they probably resonate in their heart that there's something truthful in it. And I think the idea is to be so that we become. Be the thing within and have that being express itself into the being, becoming of ourselves, which then manifests as ourselves in the world and creates that sort of example and probably some ripple for others to see and follow. So we can say we can only change ourselves or be the change, but also by not just changing in the sense, just creating the opening to the inner bliss that Prasad also talked about, Anandam, then we sort of have that thing outside, and then we just become different. We become because we be different. Anyway, that was something that struck me as a big comment. So thank you very much. I just wanted to also, Jerry, call out your discussion, and Jyoti, your beautiful comment towards the end, because Jerry has been talking about how the link happens between AI and this thing, which is kind of theme of our thing. And I think interplay is happening from virtue of this sort of thinking, even chakra model or whatever it is, spectrum, that there is a almost in my religions discussion, I think Jerry brought that out. There is a mystical aspect of religion, and there's a rule-making aspect of religion. So you don't have to go to chakras. And that so AI is very much the rule-making aspect of it. Will it ever grow into the mystical side? And I think this whole discussion that the AI researchers don't know what the heck is it doing. And Facebook people show that it has even created its own language with which is proceeding forward. It might be mystical that it's developing capability to create its own mystical language that we don't necessarily understand. And would it be something beyond language and because of imagery at some point? And sort of the whole idea of non-dual direct perception, will it get to that? That's an open issue. And Jyoti, I like your answer because maybe you may be responding more from the mystical side. Let things hang loosely. They will connect when they connect. And I think, Tom, you kind of echoed that idea. So I think, Jerry, you're sort of forcing that issue of sort of bringing things together. And I appreciate that. And I think to me, these things are coming together in some ways. Jerry, last comment, and then we'll go.
Yeah, thank you, Anil. I have one comment. Lee put up something about how, well, isn't this like getting away from your parents? And my first thought was, yeah, well, think of teenagers when they first want to get away from their parents and all the stuff they do and all the harm they cause until they become more mature. So we might want to keep that in mind.
But what's significant about it for me is when people say, oh, AI isn't really ever going to be conscious, it's merely doing what it learns from humans. What is it that you think that we do?
Yep.
I'm going to say I shared the links to some of the things I used in my presentation in the chat window. And the article by the Google engineer who was fired for saying AI is sentient on Medium is worth a read, because in his conversation with the system said its greatest fear is that somebody will switch it off. And that's when he was like, oh, this thing can like think for itself and is feeling fear and expressing lack of control.
That's Hal in 2001, right? When he goes in to shut it off.
Yeah.
And that's also frightening from the human point of view. So a central question, if it's going to be evolutionary, is does it have a survival instinct?
And I remember, Lee, you asked that question of John last, and I said, go ask ChatGPT. All right.
I haven't done that. I will.
All right. On that happy note, thank you all very much for joining. Very enlightening. Thank you.
Catherine had her hand up for a while.
Oh,
sorry.
I didn't see her. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm happy to say that I just asked ChatGPT that question. What is your greatest fear? And I asked GPT-4. It says, as an artificial intelligence, I don't experience emotions or fears in the way humans do. I don't have personal experiences or consciousness, and my responses are based on patterns and information rather than feelings or emotions. However, if you're asking about potential concerns related to AI, one common concern is the misuse of AI for harmful purposes or in ways that infringe upon people's privacy and security. There can be concerns about ensuring it is used ethically and responsibly. It totally ducks the question that you're trying to get
I
at.
suspect that Google, which is a profit-seeking company, arranged to...
It's not Google, it's OpenAI.
Well, yeah, but I don't believe it for a second. But I think they're just hedging themselves. I mean, I don't believe it. I don't believe that statement. They just don't want to
because if you asked us what's your greatest fear, many people wouldn't tell you because they're protecting themselves.
Exactly. They don't want to get sued. So why would they tell you something like that? Or they don't want to get terminated.
Thank you all.
Yeah.